We're going to look at solving quadratic equations. Now, a quadratic equation is an equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. In other words, its important feature is that it has an x squared term and it gives the graph of a quadratic equation that parabola shape. So there's two ways that we can solve quadratic equations. We can solve by factorising if possible, or by using the quadratic formula, and we're going to look at both of those methods. So the first method we're going to look at is by factorising. So this example here, it says solve, and solving is the same thing as finding the roots or finding where the graph crosses the x-axis. That's what finding the roots means. But essentially it means that we have this equation that's set equal to 0. So for this one here, we have x squared plus 3x plus 2 equals 0. So in order to factorise, now factorising means to put an expression back into brackets. So to put a quadratic or a trinomial expression back into brackets, it's two brackets, and in those brackets when we have the simple x squared term with no number in front of the x squared, then the first term in each bracket is going to be x, and the second term in each bracket, well, we find that by looking at the two number values that we have in our equation. The 2 on its own tells us which two numbers we need to multiply to get to 2. But also the two numbers that we need to multiply to get to 2 also need to add to give us 3. So there's only actually 2 is a prime number, so there's only actually two numbers that it can be, which is 2 and 1. So 2 times 1 is 2, which is what we've got for the final term, and in the middle term we can still use those numbers. 2 plus 1 is 3. So that tells us our two values that we're going to put in our brackets. Okay, so x is the first term in each bracket, and then 2 and 1, or 1 and 2, it does not matter which way around you put them in each bracket. And then what that gives us is two little mini equations to solve. So we've got x plus 2 and x plus 1. So each of those in turn we can put as equal to 0. So either x plus 2 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. So we just rearrange that, plus 2, take away 2 from both sides, and we get x equals minus 2, and we do to the same to the other side, x equals minus 1. And that is that equation solved. The other way to solve a quadratic, and if you can't see that an expression can be factorised, or you're not able to do it in some way, then the other way around that is to use what's called the quadratic formula. And that does the same thing, but it does it using a formula, and it's a formula that you're given. Okay, so the quadratic formula, now it's very important, the numbers that go into our formula come from an equation that we're given. So our ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. This a, b and c, the numbers in front of the x squared term, the number in front of the x term, and the number on its own are the numbers that we use for our formula. And our formula is this one here. And again, remember, you're given this formula. So x, our value of x, to solve for x, we get that from doing minus b, and plus or minus means that we can split this into two separate solutions, and we'll see that when we do an example. And then it's plus or minus the square root of, that's our square root sign, and then in brackets b squared minus 4ac. We call that part under the square root the discriminant, but that's one whole sum that you do there, and all of that over 2 times a. So we'll look at it as an example to see how that works in practice. Okay, so solving x squared plus 3x minus 3 equals 0, and we have to give our answers, our solutions, to one decimal place. So remember that equation is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So for our a is 1, there's no number in front of the x squared, which means it must be 1. For b, the number in front of x is 3, and for c, now take in account of the sign there, it's a minus 3, so c is minus 3. Okay, so we set up our formula. minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a, and we put our values in. Now minus b means it's the opposite of the sign that's there, so that's a positive 3 there, so minus b is going to be minus 3, plus or minus a square root. Now in this, so we've got 3 squared, b is 3, so 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times minus 3. Now if you put that into the calculator, that gives us 9 plus 12. Which is 21, and be careful because we've got 2 negatives there, that's why that makes a positive 21 for our answer under the bracket, under the square roots. So we can now split this up, so it becomes minus 3 plus root 21 over 2, or minus 3 minus root 21 over 2. So that's our plus or minus part of it split up into 2 separate solutions, and then it's a case of just putting that into our calculator. If you've got the fraction button on your calculator, then you can put the whole thing in at once with minus 3 plus root 21 on the top, and then 2 on the bottom, and minus 3 minus root 21 on the top of the other one, and 2 on the bottom. If you don't have your fraction button, then just put brackets around this, or get the solution to minus 3 plus root 21, press equals, and then divide by 2. Okay, so you have to get the answer for the full top before you divide by 2. Okay, and the same for this one here. So our 2 solutions, x equals 0.79 to 1 decimal place, that's 0.8. and x equals minus 3.79, and to 1 decimal place that's minus 3.8. Now always remember that you're checking that you've given the answer in the correct form. Okay, so this is to 1 decimal place. So I always give the answer to more than that, and then show it rounded, just for your working and for gaining the marks on this.